Hello, my name is Delight Mells, and I'm here with Senior and Disability Services, a division of Alaska's Department of Health, to give you an update on our renewal short form. We'll go ahead and introduce the short form. It isn't a new form, but we're just going to give you a little bit of context to some changes with it and do a walkthrough of the form itself. So, first, the questions we're going to be covering today: what is the short form? When can it be used? And where is it in the Harmony data system? So, what is a renewal short form? Well, it originated out of the COVID-19 public health emergency. It's a flexibility that was made permanent, and its first use, its like first formation was called an APK. And essentially, it was a more condensed version of the support plan used for when there are no changes to a support plan and it is renewing. So that flexibility is made permanent and is now called a renewal short form. It is a Harmony plan form, and the step-by-step instructions for um, entering a short form into the Harmony data system is in Chapter 8 of the T24 guide under Other Plan Actions. So, when can a short form be used? Well, first, a full Harmony plan has to have been submitted, an initial plan, a renewal plan, where all elements of the Harmony plan has been entered in. And the other piece of that is you can only use the short form when there are no service changes happening from the last approved plan to the renewal plan that you're submitting. The only exception is when a service is ending at renewal. So it wasn't used before and you're discontinuing the use of that specific service, but the rest of the plan is being continued. You can only file a short form 2 renewal cycles in a row. So you submit an initial support plan and you could do 2 short forms in a row, but that fourth plan, that third cycle, you'd have to do a full support plan. What is a full renewal? It's excuse me, I should say, so if you had it 3 times in a row, 2 short forms, the third one would have to be a full plan, regardless if there are changes or not. We need an update to what's going on with the person that the support plan's for, and that's an important part of making sure that we're all on the same page as a planning team. There are some limits to use. A short form can be submitted, and SDS may read the information put on that form and say, oh, we need a little bit more information, and may request a full renewal plan. If that does happen, SDS will give plenty of time for the planning team to come together and prepare a full support plan. So hopefully that doesn't ever happen. But if it does, we will work together with you to make sure you have time to meet that requirement. There are many cases where the previous plan may have a note in on the cover of that support plan that says that a renewal would be needed at the next cycle. So when you receive your approved plan, always check for notes because that will impact the next submission, your next renewal cycle. So make sure you take those notes into consideration and update them, and it'll tell you if you are able to do a short form or not. So please keep particular attention when you're preparing your renewal that you look at the previous plan to check those notes. There are also situations where the service itself is not a service that can be renewed with a short form. Some of those services include acuity, intensive active treatment, specialized private duty nursing, or if your previous plan was submitted and approved for over a regulatory limit. At renewal, a full plan is needed to explore, if that over the regulatory limit request is still necessary. So where is the short form in Harmony? It's in the consumer record. You'll duplicate one of the existing support plans, and then in the plan forms tab, you would go in and create a plan form. And we're going to do that today. Before we go there, though, I just want to acknowledge some critical areas in Harmony that we're about to look through that you'll have to update. The first one is our consumer record. This should have been updated at the renewal application, your demographics, if there's a diagnosis change, and your medications should all be up to date at the time of application. But sometimes things happen between when the application's been turned in and when the support plan's turned in. So you'll have to make sure that that consumer record is updated before you submit your support plan. Then the next thing to work on is really which plan do you duplicate in the system, and we'll take a look at that. Once you've duplicated your plan, you'll have to go through the plan information page and select the plan year, the type of plan, and move from there to your plan services. When we look at plan services, there's a couple of things that we're going to really key into to make sure that your submission is prepared and has everything lined out appropriately. Finally, we're going to walk through the plan form itself. So we'll look at that short form and look at the questions on there so that you have an idea of what is asked on the short form. And then it's important to know that you do have to submit the questionnaire. We're not going to turn one in today in this session, but it is a requirement. If your plan has needs and goals, you'll have to update those as well, and you can do that through an attachment if necessary. But it's optional because some people don't have habilitative goals. So just kind of keep that in mind. Finally, how do you turn it all in? Just like with a support plan, you would run a word merge report to produce your, you would produce a PDF with a word merge for the short form. You'll circulate it to the planning teams, everybody signs, and then you'll attach that support plan to a plan note. And from there, you're going to change the plan status from draft to submitted, and then you've submitted your short form renewal. So let's just talk a little bit more about plan services before we dig in. Plan services are one of the trickier spots in support plans. When you're working with a short form, you are going to have to make sure that all the dates of the service are updated. Make sure there's no odd decimals, which can sometimes happen when you're updating the plan. It can create decimals that there's no such thing as a partial unit. So you'll want to clear those. And then for the frequency and duration text boxes within each plan service, they all copy over, but sometimes you have to adjust those because of how the planning team is working and making sure that everybody's on the same page on how often the service is delivered and for how long. So you'll want to make sure that those are updated as well. But when we look at plan services, you may need to consider if you need to remove any providers that were discontinued with an amendment. So you change providers and one of them is no longer serving the client during an amendment process, those will be removed on your short form. Those would be an example of services that are discontinued. You may also have an unusual situation where there might be, well, it's not unusual, it just happens when there might have been a rate change and you might have had two plan service entries. If that happens, it's okay to remove one of them. You don't need two plan service entries for a date range on the short form when you're renewing. So let's go into Harmony. I'm going to go ahead and pull up my Chrome web browser, and I'm already queued up into a test case. This is all test information. It's not a real client, so we're okay with the HIPAA component here. What I want to cue you into is that we landed into the demographics page. Check this information. Remember, things can happen between application and the support plan. You'd also want to verify diagnosis and medication. Once you've done those, you'll navigate to the plans tab up here, and we come to our first question of, well, which form am I going to duplicate, copy over to create my new short form. As you can see in this case, the last plan I submitted was a renewal short form. So I may, and I can submit two in a row, remember? So I could duplicate this one. But there sometimes are situations where you want to go back to the previous renewal, the full renewal, or maybe you're copying an amendment. It really depends. One of the quick ways you can kind of gauge, which one to copy is to take a peek at the plan services and gauge how much work it'll take to clean up the plan services. That may be the one you'll want to copy. So looking at the far left of my screen, you can see that there's these little plus signs over here, and these are indicators that there's plan services entered. Remember, um, there has to have been a full support plan put in, so there should be at least one support plan in your list view that has this little plus sign. And what you'll see here is the at a glance of the services. So I can just take a look at them and see, oh, we aren't, this one's pretty good. We just discontinued one of those at an amendment or whatever the story is. But you can toggle, click between the different plus signs to kind of compare and figure out, well, which one is the better one to duplicate. Like I said before, it's okay to pick one of them and move from there. I'm going to grab the previous renewal short form that I grabbed, and I'm now going to duplicate it. So I'll go up to the File menu over here, and I'll click Duplicate. And it said plan was duplicated and saved as well as its needs, plan reviews, and services. Okay. We'll come down through going from the top to the bottom, starting at the plan type. I'm going to select that this is a renewal short form. I'm going to leave it in draft, and then I'm going to enter my plan dates. I'm just keeping it simple. Don't worry about my dates. This is all just for training. Whoops. All right, now that I have my plan information page updated, I'm going up to my file menu and I'm going to save the plan. And I get this plan record update. Do you want the plan service start and end dates to be updated to reflect the plan start and end dates? Yes, the plan service dates will be updated with the modified plan start and end dates. Or no, but I want the plan start and end dates to be updated. The plan dates will be updated, but the plan service dates will not be updated. Okay, what's the difference in these? Well, in saying yes, it is going to try to update all of the plan services for you. This feature typically works best from renewal to renewal. If you have amendments involved in the story, it can it may not work correctly, but there's no real loss to it because if you hit yes and it updates, great. But if it doesn't, it's just like if you hit no. So it will be fine either way. I'm going to go ahead and hit yes, and hopefully it will update. Why doesn't it always update? It's the complexity of how many amendments have happened. So I hope that we can see that it works properly this time. Let's see. To check that, I'm now going to move to plan services. This is where we first are going to check, did it update the dates? Oh, darn, it didn't. That's okay. Like I said, there's no loss to it. You can give it a try and it'll either update it for you or it won't. But we can see right off the cuff, oh, there's all these different like partial units. So I'm going to have to go in there and fix them. The other, so I know I need to go into each one of them. So my first thoughts are, is there anything on here that needs to be deleted because it was ended during the previous, like if I was working from an amendment, did anything end that's no longer active? Remember, short forms can only be used when there's no real change to the services. Everything is active. So if we're let's say for chore services, say that I ended that on an amendment, but I grabbed this one, I duplicated this one, and it's here, I would need to delete it. So I'm going to click into that particular service, and I'm going to move up to the File menu, and I'll click Delete Plan Service. It'll ask, are you sure? Okay, I'm sure. And it will delete that particular service. Next step is I want to update my date. So when I'm clicking through each one of these to fix these units, that it's already set. So I'm going to use the bulk update tool. To do that, I can use this checkbox up here at the very top, clicking this very first one over here in the corner, clicking that first one clicks all of them. So that's great. So now I'm going to move over to the File menu and click Bulk Update. It gives me this little window here where it shows me the plan start date and end date, and then it says I need to modify the plan service start and end date. Yes, that's what I want to do. I want my new plan start date to match the plan start date that I have up here at the top. And same for the end date. I'll apply those date changes. And now you can see that all of my dates have been corrected, but I still need to go into each one of these into these plan services and update those total units and just take a look at the other elements of that plan service. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab dehabilitation because there's a couple of things in here that I want you to be aware of. So we don't need to worry about dates. We're not changing the provider. Maybe we're not changing the units, but this isn't right. So make sure you check that math because that's not, remember, we don't do partial units. So you'd clear that out. You could click in here, click in the week, and it'll recalculate it for you. Don't worry about the total cost or unit cost. Those are all zeroed out. From here, we'll move to some relatively new questions. These questions are other flexibilities made permanent, where it's asking if up to 10% of the total units are going to be provided through distance delivery, and you have a yes/no box. If you select yes, then you should describe in the weekly frequency and duration how much of that time is going to be specifically for distance delivery services. Similar question, specific for day hab, is up to 10% of the total units provided in a residential setting, in a home setting. If yes, you would also need to provide that information in the weekly frequency and duration. So a couple of things to remember in frequency and duration area, how often is the service delivered? So how many times a week? And for how long? If we have that 10% out of our total amount of units, 10% of it. So how many of those sessions are going to be distance delivery? And how many of them are going to be at home? So we'll want to make sure that those pieces are captured. The next element that I want you to just double check is making sure that you have checked the conflict of interest questions. Things can happen during the course of the year from natural supports that or different family members that are paid providers. If anything changes with that, you want to make sure that it's updated within the support plan, and that isn't a change to the amount of services, right, that you had from last year, but it is a change in the plan that you'd want to document in your plan services. So I'm going to save my plan service. Let's kind of keep moving forward here. And I'm going to close it. You could have hit save and close the plan service. That would have been fine. So that's all I'm just gonna do one for you today because I want to keep going through and show you the form itself. So we'll go over to the plan forms, but you'd need to click into each one of these and take care of all of those odd decimals, make those updates to weekly frequency and duration if necessary, and conflict of interest. So plan forms, you can see we have a couple of forms in here already. We see that we have a draft renewal short form, person-centered plan details form, and the original questionnaire. Don't worry about that person-centered questionnaire. When the reviewer comes in, they're going to remove the one that's already in there in submitted status. Please add a new questionnaire. Okay, so that's my reminder to you. Make sure you copy over the information from that paper form that your client filled out and signed and put it into the system. So sometimes these forms are locked and we have instructions in the T24 on how to unlock them. But what I would like to just demonstrate for you is if you didn't have a short form in here, you go up to the File menu and add a plan form. We'll go to the Select Type, and we're going to choose the bottom one. Whoops. Support Plan Renewal Short Form. And we'll first select our section 1, the cycle. It's a renewal. Our start date is the date of the plan. And our program. If your client has both a waiver and CFC, you would select the waiver there. We'll leave this in a draft status, that's fine. And we come to our instructions, and it's pretty straightforward. Complete this form to renew a person's support plan when there's no changes to services, including but not limited to frequency or duration. Please note that SDS may review this form, decide a full support plan is needed. So when we were talking previously about updating frequency and duration, we really mean that, it hasn't really changed, but you want to make sure because of those new elements for habilitative services on distance delivery and day hab being provided in a residential setting, please make sure you update those. Those won't necessarily result in needing a full support plan, but we need that information updated. A full support plan is required every third year, regardless of whether the services are changing. Instructions for submission can be found at the bottom. So at the bottom, it's just going to tell you how to, you can see down here, it's saying that you'll attach it as a plan note. So first we go to our first entry is our last full support plan. So we have to do some math, okay? Because remember, time math. I did a short form last renewal. So from 2023 to 2024. So my last entered support plan would be the 2022 to 2023. Tracking with me? You got to think of when was my last full plan. So I'm going to put in that number, 2022. And then you enter the current one. So our first question is, are there any changes to the services being requested? So this is our unit amounts, the amounts of are we requesting more? Then this form isn't for you. Are we adding a new service? This form's not for you. We really have to stop you there and redirect back to the full plan. But if you can answer no, we're keeping everything the same from the last support plan that was approved, then you're good to go. We do have the question, have there been any changes to the recipient's demographics? If you select no, you can keep moving. And selecting yes, a new box opens that says, if yes, briefly describe the demographic changes from the last plan year. Please ensure the consumer's record have been updated and required documentation has been submitted. So if something happened, like they changed their name, I would just reference that here and say, client changed their name, and the record has been updated. Okay, or something else like an address change, like person moved, address has been updated in Harmony. That's fine. So moving down to the next piece, we come to question 3. Has the care coordinator reviewed the emergency response plan with the recipient or guardian? If no, it says stop here. This must be done prior to submitting the support plan. So you're going to have to check in with your client, make sure that you have a emergency plan so that they're safe in the event of emergency. Once you've had that conversation, you can select yes and move on. Question 4, have there been any changes to the recipient's behavior or health in the last year? In selecting no, nothing happens. In selecting yes, we'll have another box open and it says, if yes, please describe how the recipient's behavior or health has changed and address why the current service level is still sufficient for meeting the recipient's needs. Attach additional pages to this document if needed. Great. So that just means that we are looking to understand how the services are remaining the same, but things have been changing for the person. So you're going to have to give an explanation if major medical or behavioral things have occurred for that person, but the services don't need to change. And you can attach pages if you need to. If the answer is no, you can go past it. Have there been changes in the recipient's non-waiver supports and services in the last year? So that's question 6. Same process. No, nothing will open up. If you select yes, oops. I read number 6. On number 5, it has the recipient's personal goal changed? Yes or no? And you can update in the same. Same for number 6. Have there been changes in the recipient's non-waiver supports and services in the last year? So non-waiver supports could include natural supports. It could be other funding source supports, such as from the VA, from Tribal Health Consortium, from nonprofit groups. If anything that was previously established for the person giving them support so that they could live their life has changed, but we're not changing the waiver supports, we need to understand that. So that again is a no or a yes question. In selecting no, you can move forward. Number 7, final question. Are the habilitative goals and objectives changing? They're new, revised, or removed. And if someone does not have habilitative goals, you can hit not applicable. No, selecting confirms that there's no changes to the goals or objectives and they do not result in a duplication of other Medicaid paid services. This is really inferring. It's like it's trying to target the idea that if you changed your habilitative goals and maybe you have PCS at the same time, they're not duplicating, right? So that's what they're asking, or even amongst the habilitative services. So keep that in mind. If things have changed, you need to make sure that those goals and objectives were cared for over the course of changing that goal or objective. Because you can change goals and objectives at any time. We're just asking that you keep in mind that other services are impacted from that. So if you do select yes, you get that text box so that you can explain, and it's Pretty straightforward. If yes, please provide detail regarding the new, revised, or removed goals and objectives and the service name changed corresponding. It corresponds to. Attach additional pages to the document if needed. So really, we just want you to identify what changed about the goals and objectives. Did you discontinue some? Did you add some? Did anything get adjusted? This would be the spot to do it, and you could attach a additional sheet if necessary. But if you haven't changed anything since the last plan that was approved, which could have been an amendment or a previous renewal, then you're good to go. That takes us to our signature page. You will type in everyone's names here so that they print out on their word merge. So that will be the recipient's name, the parent or legal represented printed name, care coordinator, and then we have 4 waiver providers that you would type in their names. If you need more, you can always write those in using Adobe if you need more providers than what's in that listed amount. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm saving my form. I'm going to save my plan form. And something changed when I did that. Up here, so on our file menu, we now have a word merge option. I'm going to click on that option, and this is how we print out our form for everyone to be able to look at it and sign. So did you see that there was a little arrow flying up at the top? It automatically downloaded it for me. I could click it there and I have a Word document. You can also use this little printer over here in the corner to print to PDF or re-download it again. You can also open this document with generate merge document, open document over here in the corner. Once you have that PDF circulated, everybody signed it, you're all set. You are good to go. So we can go ahead and file, close this. And oh no, what happened? It's okay. I'm going to go back into my draft. My draft flew down to the bottom. And you know what? Sometimes what can happen is you won't see it right away. You'll have to click on your list view. And oh, there's my short form down here. So what just happened? I couldn't find my renewal short form clicking out of it, and it's just that the screen needed to update. So here's my draft short form. I'll click into it, and I would go to my plan notes. I would attach a plan note, file, add note, plan note. We'd go to plan attachments. We put in the plan year. We'll go short form, plan year. I would attach it, which you all know how to do, and I would make sure that it's saved. And then our final step, so attaching we'd make sure our attachments are included. We'd set our status into submitted for the note. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Save and close note. And you're like, she didn't actually attach it. Purposeful. I did that on purpose. I want you to make sure you look at that attachment over here in the corner. It says no, then I would add another note and attach it. It'll be okay. Last step is to go to our plan information. We change our status to submitted. File, save and close the plan. And that's it. That's what I have to show you today. Final thoughts. There is limited use of the short form. When in doubt, please ask. Essentially, the big rule to remember is that you can't change services with the support plan. Changes could have happened, right? You just have to explain them. Changes could have happened, but you aren't changing the services themselves with the support plan or the short form renewal. So If you're not sure what to do, if it's applicable, just ask. You can always reach out to the training unit, sdstraining@alaska.gov, or care coordination support at alaska.gov, or pop by one of our office hours on Thursdays from 8 to 9 or 3 to 4. We hope to see you there. Thanks.